So we got massively exciting news coming from Valve. There's been an announcement of 3 new hardware devices launching in 2026, as you can see here. With the coming hardware, we have a new controller, the Steam Machine, and the Steam Frame, a VR headset. We're going to get into the Steam hardware family and why this is such a big deal for Linux and Linux gaming. I'm definitely very excited about all this. I'm sure you are too. I've even reached out to Valve already about doing a review on this and have actually gotten a message back. The Steam Deck, as far as we know, is not receiving an upgrade since the OLED drop, but the Steam controller is now going to be version 2. It's been around a decade, 2015 when the first Steam controller was launched, and they've made some massive improvements here. So let's talk about the Steam controller first. Your games at your fingertips. This new controller, dubbed the Steam Controller 2, has a similar layout to what you would see on the Steam Deck. The thumbsticks, trackpads, and buttons, but a more ergonomic design with angled grips like you would find on other controllers like the PS5 or the Xbox controller. But they've also added a few cool things, including a new plug-and-play Steam controller puck. The puck can do 2 things. It can wirelessly transmit and provide a fast, stable connection for your Steam controller, much like you would with Bluetooth. You can still hook up Bluetooth if you prefer using that, but it also serves as a magnetic charging station connecting your controller magnetically with what they call a satisfying click. Now, the only people who have gained access to actually looking at some of the early design and builds of these 3 pieces of hardware are places like Linus Tech Tips and some of the big creators, YouTubers, and news outlets. But I'm very excited about these 3 new hardware drops for a very different reason than these outlets are. And specifically when it comes to the Steam Machine and the Frame, the VR headset. So what's nice about this is they do get upgraded thumbsticks with magnetic thumbsticks. This will have better responsiveness and get past the issue of stick drift, which is also known as controller drift or analog drift. This is a common controller issue when your game character or the camera moves, even when you're not touching the joystick. It happens over time as the potentiometers inside traditional joysticks wear over time. Going to magnetic thumbsticks completely gets rid of that. They got high definition rumble and grip enabled gyro for people using grip sense. This will be a new input for the Steam controller that enables you to use gyro with capacitive touch. Other inputs that you would expect are the trackpads, just like you would use with the Steam Deck. Your favorite mouse and keyboard games are still available to be used with precision and allows you to play in another way with your games. There's also motion control with the gyro, grip buttons, the Steam button, and a quick access menu. Here's the overall design of the controller. Kind of reminds me of an elongated Xbox controller where the left joystick and the D-pad are located. These are just swapped and put these pads in like you would have seen on a Steam Deck. Anyways, they claim that the Steam controller plays well wherever Steam is, so you can use it with anything running Steam, the new Steam Machine, or the new Steam Frame. So let's get into some of those and how this might be a massive deal for moving Linux into the future. Now, there is no price available for any of the new pieces of hardware. It has not been announced yet, so we can only speculate how much these would be. But the Steam controller, you would expect it to be somewhere in the realm of an Xbox or PS5 controller. Otherwise, how would you expect them to compete? So you can get a PS5 controller for around $65 nowadays, upwards of 70. So you really wouldn't want to price this thing much higher than that. Well, honestly, you'd probably want to price it lower, as there's many options for controllers out there, but maybe they're going for an ecosystem thing and they can charge a little bit more of a premium. But if they get much higher than that, they're going to be in trouble. So it'll be interesting to see what the announcement of the actual price for each of these things are. We'll be following along with that, but let's move on to the Steam Machine. Now, this is what I'm most excited about. This allows you to play all your Steam games. Well, most of them. Again, you don't have those anti-cheat games because this is running full-fledged Linux with KDE Plasma as the desktop environment. Another win for a full desktop class Linux gaming PC. Valve and Steam are doubling down and committing to Linux as a primary gaming platform, and this is amazing. The Steam Deck already forced millions of people to use Linux, but that was handheld only. Now we're seeing people get a first-class Linux experience with the full-fledged Linux gaming PC. This really has the potential to push way more people towards using Linux, as well as pushing developers in order to finally get over that anti-cheat on Linux issue, where devs do not want to develop for Linux because they lack anti-cheat tools and they don't want to focus their efforts on making anti-cheat work on Linux. This may finally force them over the hurdle because a lot more people are going to be using Steam OS, which is the operating system that's going to be running on the Steam machine and currently runs on Steam Deck. So this may accelerate Linux gaming adoption massively, bringing more developers to Linux, improving the entire Proton and Wine ecosystems, and making Windows less necessary for gaming. We've already seen massive key players such as AMD and Nvidia trying to modernize its Linux stack. And now with devices like this, we see a multi-device ecosystem for gaming that's normalizing Linux in the mainstream hardware segment. So getting into what the Steam Machine actually is. Steam Machine is optimized with Steam OS, an operating system for gaming with fast suspend, resume, and cloud saves, and that's just the start. A small form factor. It's about a 6-inch by 6-inch cube. They claim it's cool and quiet. I have no idea how that's going to be possible. As a 6 by 6-inch computer with something equivalent to a 4060 series GPU, that's going to be hard to cool off. And that's just one piece of the equipment. You still have to have the CPU, the motherboard, storage, memory, and apparently power supply built right into it. There's going to be a lot of peripherals and aux components that you need to keep cool in this thing. But anyways, that's the claim, cool and quiet. And it says it's got I/O for days, including a 1 gigabit Ethernet port, DisplayPort 1.4, HDMI 2.0, a little disappointing that it's not 2.1, 1 USB-C, 4 USB-A, and some more. So there's CPU and GPU 4K gaming at 60 frames per second with FSR, thanks to discrete semi-custom AMD desktop class CPU and GPU. So they're going to be using AMD, which makes sense for a Linux-based operating system and this computer that they're building, as AMD plays a little better on Linux. I do want to mention FSR. FSR is AMD's AI-free upscaling and image enhancement technology known as Fidelity FX Super Resolution. It allows your GPU to render the game at a lower resolution, let's say like at 1080p or 1440p, and uses an algorithm to upscale it and sharpen and clean the image out for you. The final output or image is at 4K. This means that the GPU never actually renders natively at 4K. It renders fewer pixels and fills in the missing details. So this is not truly native, and some people may consider this a little bit of a cheating way to do it. Purists would say you didn't actually create 4K image. And upscaling can introduce issues with things like shimmer, ghosting, softness, edge crawling, aka you can get a hallucinated image that wasn't actually rendered. But it is still a smart move by Valve, as 4K gaming is then available on a smaller level GPU. That means lower wattage, lower heat, quieter systems, and it makes sense on how they're going to get away with a 6-inch by 6-inch build. Anyways, the storage is available in 2 different sizes, although you can expand this on your own, not only via a micro SD, but the actual internal storage can be changed out, and they actually show things taken apart in their release announcement video. You can check it out. I'll post a link in the description below. And as you're going down there, make sure to subscribe below, smash that like button on the way back up. Connectivity includes 2x2 Wi-Fi 6E plus Bluetooth 5.3 with a dedicated antenna. And if you use the Steam controller, you can use the wireless adapter built right into the Steam machine for direct pairing. And finally, the power again is built right into the Steam machine, which is another fascinating thing. Of course, there's an LED strip which you can animate and make different colors, turn off completely, whatever you want to do, you can customize this thing. I think it's a gimmick, but whatever, it's available. Another thing that they showcase is that you can make this thing your own by changing the front case. As you can see, the cover is being changed ever so slightly. And there's already companies out there that are developing all new cases for this thing. As they already know what the final design looks like, they're well ahead of the schedule on when this thing gets released to having different modifications for this Steam machine. Anyways, let's get on to some of the coolest stuff here. They say optimized for gaming, it runs Steam OS. Steam machine runs Valve's gaming first operating system. Steam OS is designed to provide a plug and play user experience while keeping the power and flexibility of a PC. Experience Steam OS in the same way as other Steam hardware like the Steam Deck and Steam Frame. This is fantastic, not only for Linux, but for people using consoles. More and more nowadays, we're getting away from consoles and going to PCs, which makes sense. It's the next logical step. Why have all these different environments to really do the same thing? And then at the end, make the hardware proprietary where you really can't change things out or do anything or even upgrade it in the future, much like the Xboxes and the PS5. Long gone are going to be those days, hopefully after the Steam machine comes out. And yes, it is a PC. They claim the Steam machine is optimized for gaming, but you can still use it as your PC, install your own applications, or even better, a whole nother operating system. Who are we to tell you how to use your computer? That's just awesome. So we're going to have more people using Linux. We're going to be having more people gaming on Linux, and we're going to have better devices for Linux. This is a pretty big win. Great job, Valve. Great job, Steam. Very excited to see this in early 2026. Now, I want to talk about pricing for the Steam machine. If it proves true that in this small form factor, we can get something like a 4060 series NVIDIA GPU equivalent. Again, they're using AMD, so it's not going to be NVIDIA, but something of that magnitude or power, a nice AMD CPU, and a built-in power supply, well, I think it's going to have to be on par with other consoles because you could build a computer yourself that would be more powerful for a similar price, probably not in the same form factor just because you would have to really think about how you build the heatsink around your computer when doing something custom like that. But regardless, the price point's going to have to probably be in the range of a new PS5 or Xbox gaming console, especially if this is going to be on par with about the hardware of a PS5. That's the claim, at least, that I've seen floating around. So we're talking around maybe that 500 mark in order to make this thing really sell. Now, it could go a little above that, I would think, just because it's not proprietary and you can actually use it as a PC. So you're not really just locked into using a console. You can use it as a computer, but if they go much above maybe that 600, 650 mark, I think they're going to be in trouble. We'll see how that all pans out and what the marketing ends up looking like, but here are the current tech specs. Notice that there's an asterisk here because they probably reserve the right to be changing things around, but the CPU is a semi-custom AMD Zen 4 6-core 12-thread processor with up to 4.8 gigahertz clock cycle and 30-watt TDP, meaning this is not an off-the-shelf Ryzen processor. And TDP just means thermal design power, aka how much heat dissipation or energy is required at full throttle. So up to 30 watts is what is being used by this particular CPU. Then for the GPU is a semi-custom RDNA 3, 28 CUs, 2.45 gigahertz max sustained clock at 110 watt TDP. RAM will come in as a 16 gigabyte DDR5, 8 gigabyte GDDR6 VRAM, meaning onboard memory 16 gigs, 8 gigs belongs to the GPU. Power is going to be an internal power supply, and storage can either be a 512 gigabyte NVMe or 2 terabyte NVMe. Most people will probably end up springing for the 512 just because you can actually upgrade the storage or internal storage by yourself, or put external storage in as well. There's also a high-speed microSD card slot that can help extend things as well. There are also claims that you'll be able to change out the RAM. If you wanted more RAM memory, you could upgrade that 16 gigs SODIMM RAM, just like a laptop, to maybe 32 or 64. I don't know where the upper limits are, but I'm sure we'll learn that over the coming weeks. Connectivity. Well, we've talked about all sorts of connectivity. That's all great. It's got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and can connect up to the Steam controller natively. All great. Displays. It claims that the DisplayPort 1.4 can go up to 4K 240 Hz or 8K at 60 Hz. Supports HDR, FreeSync, and daisy chaining. The HDMI 2.0 port supports up to 4K 120 Hz. Again, HDR, FreeSync, and CEC. USB are 2 USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 ports, 2 USB-A 2.0 ports, and 1 USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 on the backside. It's got gigabit Ethernet. The size is 152 millimeters tall, 162.4 millimeters deep, 156 millimeters wide. All in all, about 2.6 pounds, or that's equivalent to around 5.73 pounds. Very, very lightweight. The coolest part here, software, the operating system, SteamOS 3, KDE Plasma for the desktop. A big win for Linux operating systems and Linux desktop environments as Valve continues to ship with their Arch-based Linux equivalent and KDE Plasma to the masses. We finally have seen Linux push over to 3% market share when it comes to the Steam survey, and this might be the tipping point where it really starts climbing. Can we get to the tune of Apple and their MacBooks, which is like, I don't know, 12% or something at this point? We all know Windows is sucking more and more lately as they've stopped supporting Windows 10 as of almost a month ago at this point. SteamOS is becoming a real third-party platform and introducing Linux to millions, as the Steam Deck sold millions. And maybe in the future, SteamOS will even spread to desktops. And we do have operating systems like Bazzite on Linux, which is called the next generation of Linux gaming. More than likely, we're going to get SteamOS at some point as well, as there's only a few devices that officially support SteamOS. But now that we're getting a full-fledged AMD-powered PC, we might actually be able to install SteamOS on many more devices coming here in the future. That's exciting as well. But for the time being, if you want to install a wonderful Linux operating system to play games on Linux, Bazzite is your best option at the moment. And finally, the last portion. Just when you think you have two great products coming from Valve, the Steam Frame enters the playing field. It's amazing that they were able to announce 3 new products coming out in 2026. As with the Steam Frame, we get a VR and non-VR gaming experience. So this is a wireless VR headset, which can work with the Steam controller too, and it has a wireless VR design with dual radios, eye tracking, and a mentioned standalone mode that can run as an ARM PC with Steam OS. That's pretty freaking cool. Now it is reliant on a new translation layer because it does require going from x86 calls to ARM translated calls. It uses something called FEX to do this. We can get into that in a different video, but I want to really go through some of the Steam Frames offerings here. Valve claims a high quality streaming experience with wireless adapter and dual radios. And streaming, foveated streaming is a new feature that optimizes detail where your eyes are looking, and typical offers over a 10x improvement in image quality and effective bandwidth. So behind the scenes, it says we're using low latency eye tracking data to steer the best quality pixels only to where you're looking, aka it's hyper focusing wherever your eyeball is looking. I mean, you can tell right here, you can see the pixel density getting much higher wherever your eye is currently being tracked. It's pretty cool because the ones on the peripheral don't really matter as much as long as you focus where your, well, let's call it your retina is looking. Very good. What's also great, you get these 2 controllers with the VR headset. Very minimal, a few buttons, the Steam button, and a couple joysticks with a D-pad. But it also supports standalone play. It's not all wireless. Steam Frame is a PC that runs SteamOS powered by a Snapdragon 8 series processor. Now you understand FEX and why you need ARM. This is an ARM-based processor. It has 16 gigs of RAM. Steam Frame supports standalone playing on a growing number of both VR and non-VR games without needing to stream from your PC. So that's pretty cool. This is running more like an operating system and hardware than it is just a virtual system that has to stream from other additional hardware. So another blow is that the Steam Frame is a PC. It runs SteamOS and does the exact same thing that you could expect from the Steam Frame. This makes it really cool. Again, you can imagine using this hardware here as basically a monitor where you could completely run KD, Plasma, the desktop environment, and Linux all on its own on a big screen TV right in front of you in virtual reality. That's pretty cool. You're not just tied to gaming on this thing. This, again, is another historic breakthrough, I think, in Linux, as we're getting a VR headset that's PC based and you can use it as a PC, and a Linux PC at that. Big wins for Linux. Now this one, I don't know what the price is going to be for this. I don't get involved in much VR headsets. If I just had to make a guess, somewhere between the 500 to the 750 mark in order to get these selling. I'd love to know what you think about the pricing, the product lineup, and these announcements of new hardware from Valve in the comments section below. I will go through the tech specs just briefly here. The processor, again, is a 4 nanometer Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. It's got ARM. So it has to use FEX, which is a translator from x86 programs, which most games and programs that run on Linux would be x86. FEX allows those x86 calls to be completely translated over to ARM64. So that essentially allows you to run those applications on ARM processors. That's all you really need to know about FEX. And the reason we need it is because we have an ARM64 processor on this headset. The RAM is 16 gigabytes of unified LPDDR5X RAM. You have storage options of either 256 gigs or 1 terabyte of UFS storage and a micro SD card slot, again, for that expanded storage, which is a great option to have. If you want to go with the 256 model, you can expand it with the micro SD slot. Power is a rechargeable 21.6 watt hour lithium ion battery. There's one USB 2.0 port in the rear for charging and data transfer, and you can charge it with the USB-C at 45 watts. The display and optics are a 2160 by 2160 square LCD That's per eye. It has 72 to 144 hertz refresh rate. The optics allow for a large field of view up to 110 degrees with that cool new technology that allows you to track your eyes and adjust that pixel density as necessary. It's got Wi-Fi 7, 2x2, with dual radios that enable up to 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi and 6 gigahertz VR streaming. And the overall size is 175 millimeters by 95 millimeters by 110 millimeters. And the weight with the strap is 440 grams, which is around 1 pound. Fairly light. Again, the coolest part, operating system, it's running SteamOS 3, which is Arch-based, and the desktop is KDE Plasma. Wins all around for Linux and Valve, as Valve is shipping an Arch-based KDE desktop environment to mainstream users, especially gamers. KDE is getting massive visibility and hopefully funding from all of this. It feels more and more as if game devs must consider Linux. If more and more hardware, especially gamers, are going towards Linux, well, what else can you do than improve Linux support? SteamOS is becoming a real consumer operating system, and users are getting an alternative to Windows that feels polished, and especially an alternative to Xbox, as I'm sure it will deal another blow to Microsoft. Let's hope for a unified Linux gaming platform that emerges from all of this, as this might be the most impactful Linux operating system and desktop moment since the advent of Proton itself. Again, let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. I'm very interested. Overwhelmingly, I think there's a positive response to what Valve has announced. Valve feels like they've been very consumer friendly compared to companies like Sony, Microsoft, and Meta. We'll see how anti-cheat plays out. Maybe there's going to be some announcements around that as well, as anti-cheat should be server side, not kernel side. And a lot of us oppose the fact that kernel level anti-cheat should not be entering Linux. We'll see what's going to happen with gaming developers and companies and how they're going to react to all this, but this is definitely some pressure on game studios. I'm excited to play all this out. Hopefully Valve considers me for a review. I'd love to get my hands on some of this hardware. Make sure to subscribe below. You clearly liked the video, and smash that like button on the way back up. Catch me in a great community on Discord, and I'll catch you in another video. Thanks for watching.